Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be joining us. My name is David Hardy. I'm chairman of the Education Group of the British-Kazakh Society. The chairman of the society, Rupert Goodman, was due to join us today, but sadly a technical hitch has meant that he can't. So he's asked me to pass on his warm wishes to you, Vice Minister, and to all participants today. This is the second event of the British-Kazakh Society Education Group. Our speaker today, the Vice Minister for Trade, will be speaking in English, and many of you will want to note that at the bottom of the screen on the right, there's a little globe icon which gives you Russian English interpretation, so you can switch between those at will. The first event that we had back at the end of October last year informed what we would be doing today. That event, for those of you who weren't there, covered the idea of the triple helix, namely the links between government, universities, and business. Crucial for trade, crucial for diversification of economies, and so on. Kazakhstan this year is celebrating 30 years of independence. Young Kazakhs are taking forward the first president's far-sighted vision. And great strides have been achieved by Kazakhstan. President Tokayev is continuing those reforms, and excellent people are always needed to translate those visions into practice. It's a great honor and privilege for me today to welcome one of these excellent people. Vice Minister of Trade, Assel Zhanassova, Vice Minister in the Ministry of Trade and Integration, is working hard to take forward these visions and will tell us today a little bit about Kazakhstan's trade and integration strategy in an era of global challenges. Vice Minister.
Thank you, David. Good morning, good afternoon, maybe good evening for most of the participants. I'm very honored, and first of all, would like to thank you for this society, for inviting, because Cambridge, as you know, it's my second home, and I was delighted to agree to participate in this fabulous speech today. And I think it's one of the first discussions, because in 1 hour, it's difficult to cover such a difficult topic and challenging one. And I'm looking forward to discuss this further later on. And thank you so much again. And I would like, I was thinking what themes and topics I can cover today. And maybe some of you are expecting different questions. And I guess let me present from my duty point of view what I'm doing under this ministry. And we're happy to take questions afterwards and discuss more broad about Kazakhstan strategy, what government is doing in different fields. So if we can please share the slides. Samad. So the next slide. Who I am. I am 33 this year. I'm graduate from Cambridge. I got a bachelor degree in computer science in 2010. 10 plus years of experience in IT, digital space. I used to work in UK for 5 years, and one day I decided that I got enough experience in UK and I need to return home and start doing interesting projects for development of our country. So I started my journey in Kazakhstan working as a deputy director at National Bank of Kazakhstan, mainly in financial sector. Then I was a CEO of a national digital agency who is currently doing digital Kazakhstan program globally, country-wise. After that, because I had that closer relations to development of financial sector, and I have that greatest plan how we can develop fintech, new industries, and taking into mind that digital technologies breaking through the financial space. First of all, I thought to join Astana International Financial Center. For 3 years, I was a chief digital officer out there. And I was offered in July last year to be Vice Minister of Trade and Integration, to lead all the digital trade initiatives in the country. So this is me. I decided to put my photo from graduation at Cambridge. So that's who I am. So what are the global challenges for the trade? As you know, COVID actually changed the way how we live, how we behave, how we trade. Everything has changed. On top of that, technologies are disrupting any business models, the processes. So companies are rethinking their traditional business models and how they can quickly adapt technologies to change, because otherwise competition will eat. Consumers' behavior changing. So every day people are changing their preferences because offers, they're going online, and the competition is increasing among companies. Trade wars, US and China, Europe, Brexit, that's affecting to the supply chain a lot. And governments are they're not adapting, and they're not flexible enough to kind of adapt to these changes. So what do we need to do? Next slide. In these slides, WTO predicts that trade will shrink by 30% in the best case, and the worst case will be 32%. This is a prediction that they made what will happen at post-COVID era. Next slide. So after the second industrial revolution, the introduction of seamless railroads changed the economic of trading across the national borders. The digital revolution in 90s or 2000s enabled companies to interact with suppliers and customers. Global value chains existed before the internet, but the internet further enabled fragmentation and offshoring of production by vastly improving coordination and communication costs. As China and other developing countries began participating in these production networks of specialized suppliers and assembly plants, trade flows soared and stretched around the world. So companies started to relocate their production lines in different countries. Today, the next generation of technologies will reshape trade flows and global value chain again. But fourth industrial revolution that already the World Economic Forum as they say that IT revolution, innovations will have a more varied and complex effect on trade in the years ahead. Some advances like digital...
Сегодняшняя индустриальная революция, а также революция в области IT, они будут иметь свой очень комплексный эффект на то, что меняется. Конечно, есть еще вопросы, связанные с интернетом вещей. И считается, что они тоже будут менять и сокращать логистические и другие расходы. Но другие технологии могут как раз-таки наоборот изменить торговые потоки, меняя расположение того, что продается и покупается через границу. Чистое воздействие всей этой новой волны новых технологий не совсем пока очевидно для всех, потому что никто даже не знает, что именно произойдет. Но страны должны быть готовы к этому. Для компаний и бизнеса в Казахстане, эти тенденции будут полезными для кого-то из них, а наоборот, и приведет к созданию каких-то проигравших в этой области, в этой игре. Поэтому все должны быть готовы к развитию новых подходящих навыков, инфраструктур, фокусироваться на потенциале и инновациях. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста.
Companies trading across borders often lose time and money to customs processing or delays in international shipment and payments. As you know, a lot of countries are still on paper-based trade, so that actually reduces the cross-border inter-country trade. But a number of new technologies can ease this friction. Digital platforms, for instance, connect buyers and sellers directly, lowering the cost.
Например, цифровые платформы помогают объединять продавцов и покупателей, сокращая расходы, связанные с поиском покупателей. Они развиваются уже в таких областях, как электронные
and labor services. And there is a room much for growth. For example, Alibaba's Ali research projects that cross-border B2C e-commerce sales alone research approximately $1 trillion by 2020. And actually they were right. And B2B e-commerce could have 5 or 6 times as that figures. So while some of these transactions may substitute for traditional offline trade flows, e-commerce could still spur some 1.3 trillion to 2.1 trillion which will be reached by 2030. This will include many small businesses that can directly reach customers across the globe. eBay, Alibaba, Amazon, Jumia, and other online marketplaces are enabling this rise for giving access to micro SME companies to sell their products and services. Today, startups, they tap global talents, finance, and consumers from day one. Additionally, logistics technology is also continuing to improve. The Internet of Things can track shipment of real time, while AI, artificial intelligence, can route the trucks based on current road conditions. So automated document processing can speed goods through customs. So eventually, I think in the future, we shouldn't have people standing on the border checking all the paperwork. So it has to be automated.
Вместо того, чтобы там стояли люди на границе, проверяли каждый товар, сейчас все должно быть автоматизировано. То есть вот такой переход требует.
Trucks, a number of ports worldwide have introduced automated cranes and guided vehicles that can unload, stack and reload containers faster.
Плюс создают какие-то хабы решения, которые могут легким образом переводить и переносить эти грузовики и так далее. Помимо этого, также электронные платежи помогут.
Ability and success in trade can be determined, but we can see today that a lot of companies, even financial organizations under the automation of trade finance, like Citi, they are investing and they're building a lot of research and investment in testing these technologies in trade to accelerate trade across the globe. That's the future. We calculate that this group of technologies could reduce shipping and customs processing time by 16-28%. The academic literature finds that 1% reduction in trade costs can result in 0.4% increase in trade flows. Based on these figures, we actually estimated that these technologies together could potentially boost overall trade by 11% in 2030. So if we move to the next slide. If you can see, I put some figures, some indices from doing business. Kazakhstan today, at international trade, it takes 105th place. So we've done a lot in easing imported goods. So as you see, green, imported goods are processed very quickly, even zero processing time, okay, 6 minutes. But to process exporting goods, it will take 128 hours to process, whereas the benchmark is 25 hours. That's not a good indices for us, because Kazakhstan's president put a kind of KPI. By 2025, we need to achieve 41 billion US dollars in export and achieve 1,000 companies exporting, which is not oil and gas and metals, additional companies that need to increase their exporting goods and services by 2025. And this actually shows that we're not really ready. And our task, my task, is to make it easy, to make it paperless for exporters of Kazakhstan to access different countries quite easily in terms of paper processing, in terms of logistics, in terms of access in different markets. So, and China is obviously the biggest market we're heading. The next slide. So here I indicated that, as I already told, that technologies like Internet of Things, AI, 3D printing, electrical vehicles, renewables, digital goods, that actually will have benefit, enormous benefits in money, in time, and profit for all the countries by 2030. Next slide. So the diffusion of automation and artificial intelligence technologies suggests that multiple industries will experience a profound shift in importance of capital versus labor. As a result, we can see already a trend towards moving production, especially after COVID. Production went closer to consumer markets, such as US and EU. Today, only 18% goods trade is from low wage to a high wage country, and that share is shrinking in the most labor intensive industries, such as textiles and apparel. Both, for example, Adidas and Nike, for instance, they have designed new lines of athletic shoes that make them amenable to full automation of production process. And they have opened new factories in Germany and US, for example, Adidas in US and Nike in Mexico. In addition to affecting the trade in manufacturing goods, automation will influence trade in services. Many call centers and help desk services they're moving to virtual agents. Maybe you already came across a lot of, when you call the virtual agent with different names, they answer the questions, and you don't really face with real people today. It's less and less companies experiencing. So these virtual agents, they are working through natural language processing abilities and beginning to handle a wider range of tasks. This is leading some companies to automate customer support and back office services rather than offshoring the team. So they stop offshoring from India. That used to be, they used to hire people from India, from Indonesia, from Bangladesh, because they used to be labor service for call centers. And now that kind of trend is changing. This trend could reduce 160 billion global market for business process outsourcing, now one of the most heavily traded service sector. Additive manufacturing, it's 3D printing, could also influence future trade flows. Most experts believe it will not replace mass production over the next decade, but its cost, speed, and quality are still in its limitations. But it's gaining traction of prototypes, replacement of parts, toys, shoes, and medical devices. So what Minister of Trade is doing currently, we are setting up a center for tests with 3D printing, for hearing aids equipment. So to provide it for free for elderly people, for needed children without parents. So we would like to test, rather than buying from abroad and spending money for logistics and other costs, we would like to build small center that will buy some files for production of these services and test that kind of technologies that can affect and increase the trade and accessibility to these products in Kazakhstan. So overall, we estimate that automation, AI, and additive manufacturing could collectively reduce global goods by up to 10%. in 2030, as compared to the baseline, which is $4 trillion in annual trade flows. However, this reflects only the direct impact of these technologies on enabling production closer to end customers in advanced economies. It is also possible that these technologies could lead to nearshoring or regionalization of trade instead of reshoring in advanced economies. So I think Kazakhstan, which is between Asia and Europe, can play a biggest role when global companies will rethink their reshoring production lines. We can actually be a big country for taking that production lines in our, or even Central Asian region. I think will be interesting place to consider. So next slide. As technology transforms some products and services, it will also change the content and volume of trade flows. Some of these may have unexpected consequences of trade flows. So renewable forms of energy, such as solar and wind, are less tradable than carbon-based fuels, such as coal. The ongoing decarbonization of economies and shift to renewable energy may therefore reduce trade in energy. As another example of indirect impacts on trade, growing adoption of electronic vehicles could reduce trade in auto parts. So McKinsey actually estimates that electrical vehicles will make up some 17% of total car sales globally by 2030, but as their drivetrains have only about 15%, as many moving parts of internal engines that can be replaced within the country. So the shift from physical to digital flows that started years ago with individual movies, games is now evolving once again as companies such as Netflix, Tencent Video, Spotify popularize their streaming and subscription models. So streaming now accounts for nearly 40% of global recorded music revenues. Cloud computing uses a similar pay-as-you-go subscription models for storage and software. That freeing users from making heavy capital investment in IT infrastructure. So the shift from physical goods to streaming, leasing, pay-as-you-go services is only in its infancy. They will affect not only the composition of trade from physical goods to services, but likely also affect the relative value of services. So as we see, for example, in UK, the Ministry of Trade, they have revisited their trade strategy, the methodology, and they started to calculate the services like Netflix, like Airbnb. When you order a kind of rent a flat through Airbnb, they actually calculate as an exported or imported service, and it counts for the statistics, which we can't say about rest of the countries, because we only, for example, calculate we don't calculate digital services in our statistics. And I think a lot of countries, they need to rethink in methodology what they will be counting in the future, because that shift is kind of expanding quickly. Next slide. So I mentioned about the services. The net impact of these forces on global trade flows is very uncertain, but in plausible scenarios, it's quite possible that next impact could be to further accelerate the shift to global trade flows from goods to services. Already today, services trade is growing 60% faster than goods trade overall. Some types of services, such as IT services, telecommunication, business services, or IP royalties, are growing 2 or 3 times as fast as goods services. Moreover, the 30% of the value of the traded goods comes from the embedded services in their production, such as engineering and design, financial services, distribution, and marketing. Counted in value-added terms, services already account for at least 45% of global trade flows. So if we talk about 5G wireless networks, virtual reality, augmented reality may all give a boost in services in the future. The advent of ultra-fast 5G wireless networks opens new possibilities for delivering services globally. Remote surgery, for example, they may become viable as networks transmit sharp images without any delays, and robots respond more precisely to remote manipulation. In industrial plants, 5G can support augmented and virtual reality-based maintenance from remote locations. For example, we're currently testing with World Economic Forum and the big production mining companies, how the virtual reality Internet of Things can help in maintenance, predictive maintenance, and that actually reduces cost and reshapes the business models. And people who is currently working on maintenance can allocate and can be retrained and can work in different parts of this business. Next slide. So we are entering a new chapter that's being driven by the flows of information and data, as well as technological changes that are reshaping industry of trade and value chains. The next slide. So what is the Minister of Trade and Integration is doing? Because we have a lot of challenges is when we have these data flows across the borders, what is the regulation? What is the regulation of data flows? Because today we shouldn't regulate the consumer goods that we should regulate, but how data is regulated. What is the personal data? How we should care about the personal data protection? How we adapt to these new technologies, how we accelerate its use, because that comes with the how we change our policies, from the government point of view, and how we should build the core infrastructure that will enable that innovation to help business and people overall, because trade it comes in all the sectors. It could be education, it could be energy sector, it's mining, it's any sector of Kazakh, any sector or industry is affected. So I think the role of Minister of Trade is huge, because we need to enable and take out these frictions and bring new technologies. And coordinate all other ministries to kind of look at the same direction. And one of the examples, I'll come across the next slide, what we have done. So this is a digital trade ecosystem in Kazakhstan. Our goal is today to make a digital traceability from the production of goods, whether it's delivered to end customer, whether it's exported. So we need to know any goods that is produced, how it's, where from it's made, what is the information of that good, okay? So where it came from, because that hugely affects to the security of the people. Because COVID actually showed us we were dependent on imported goods, and when the borders closed, we needed to find deficit of baseline products. So we identified where our gaps in the production of the socially needed products and goods in the market. So our role is, for example, make it when we make it digitally available information, so any person can scan the QR code when they buy a good in the shop. They can check whether the producer, whether it's certified, because today in the market we have 40% is a gray certificate. So they can buy or copy a certificate which cannot be proved. Okay, so we need to verify that certificate, whether it's really the producer has a certificate or not. So we should eliminate the gray products in the market. That's the huge project we're doing. We are putting 7 layers of security on the certificates we issue. So we can verify where that good came from, whether it's imported or produced internally. And any data, in order to eliminate the deletion of data, or we are putting on a blockchain, so people cannot play with the data. Okay, so that will reduce corruption level as well. In order to increase the exported goods, to stimulate our companies to do paperless trade, under the Belt and BRI project, Belt and Road Initiative, and a lot of trade volumes with China, we have initiated and launched a platform with IT's group company. They are partner with Chinese government. So we made a full integration with this platform with Chinese logistics companies. So exporters or importers can do easily paperless trade in this platform. Also with Singapore, Singapore, as you know, they are very famous for development digital trade. And we are working with Crimson Logic company that's used to be a daughter IT company of the Minister of Trade of Singapore. They have connection with 62 countries, so their system sees all the customs, papers, what's going on in different borders. So we are a 63rd country now connecting to that system. So that will enable paperless trading between the countries. On the social aspect, so last year, it was 6 months now since July. So first project I started is social e-wallets. So what is it? COVID showed us. We didn't know when we wanted to support people with government payments to help who didn't have enough money and or were unemployed during these lockdown periods. We didn't know who is who, okay, whom to pay. So what we did from this year, we're launching this special project called electronic social e-wallets. That's based on electronic IDs of the any citizen. So we know about the citizen, and we prepay for this electronic wallet, which is not connected to the card, because currently the person has to apply for this service. They have to give the bank details, which is a lot of paperwork. You need to go, you need to stand in the queues, you know, it's, and you even don't know whether that application will be processed or not. So we want to be predictive and prepay to that person. So then they can decide whether to stay in this social e-wallet or whether they can use their bank card to transfer that money. And that social wallet, or only you can pay for the, in the future, we can see where the person spends, which products they buy. So it's traceable. Because usually these people tend to be without any earnings, and that the amount is counted to so that they should be enough for the monthly living. So we can track and get a feedback whether that amount is enough, or the prices are high and we should reconsider our policy. Another project what we have launched is customer rights protection. So by January this year, actually all the complaints with, for example, a customer who bought the product in the shop want to return the product, but the shop is not accepting. But the customer has the right within the 14 days to return this product if it's not acceptable. So these people didn't know where to go. It was on the paper. So they write a paper, and then that paper goes within the government agencies, and no one knows what's the current status. So what we did an online application that easily a person can scan a QR code that is in the shop, and they just write their complaint, and we react in 10 days time. Okay, so that make actually this kind of small steps making the relationship between government and the citizen quite effective. Okay, so we can first of all track, we can analyze, we see the feedback from the people, what's going on in the market, and technologies they are helping us to react and make it effective government-citizen relationship. So and under Eurasian Economic Union also, we are, I think daily we are experiencing a lot of documents, we're reviewing lots of recommendations, policies, and that's not kind of transparent. So what we wanted, so businesses, people can access online that information. They can, using the artificial intelligence and virtual assistants, for example, business can check if he wants or she wants to export a good to Russia, they can tick the parameters, and virtual assistant can draw a kind of roadmap, what kind of barriers, what kind of licenses they need. Okay, so rather than losing time in standing in the queues and getting to the right people or right offices, that virtual assistants will help us to kind of solve that problems. So that's kind of, in short. I know that there is a time, and we need to leave some time for the question and answers and discussion. This is overall what we do in the digital trade point of view, but we'll be happy to answer if we have broader questions. Thank you.
Excellent.
Vice Minister, thank you very much for that detailed examination of supply chains, of the technology, the changes and the future increased use of that to improve efficiency. I was particularly interested in your comments on the profound effect on where production takes place and the impact not only on business and people, but on governments. Those changes, of course, are always with us, and you highlighted how COVID-19 has probably speeded up some of those trends and indeed helped to identify some of the opportunities. You pointed out that governments
тоже нужна. Вы указали, что правительство не очень гибкое.
And I just wonder, if I may, to start the questioning off, if I could ask you, with regard to the university and business side, how is it feasible? What could take place to encourage them to be more responsive to the changes you've outlined? And indeed, could they indeed be the catalysts of change to make them, if you like, a bit more entrepreneurial?
Thank you, David. I think that's very, very important question, because in order to actually reach and implement these projects, we need talent, we need people, and as well as business that will be future kind of faced, and which a lot of businesses today, they need to adapt. It's not like less competition. They used to do one thing, and they shouldn't kind of invest to the future digital technologies. And I think this role of business and universities is crucial. So government's role today to combine, give a demand or direction for universities, what kind of next level talent we need to prepare for the next industrialization, because businesses, they need to be ready when they say, okay, we need to hire this amount of people. For example, we have a problem today with data scientists or data analysts, because the AI, all this machine learning, they are always ongoing trend. It's not trends anymore. It's all companies are moving, but Kazakhstan's business, they're struggling because there are no specialists in this field. So we have to hire people from abroad, okay, to bring that knowledge and capabilities. That kind of examples actually shows that universities, they play a crucial role in enabling these technologies. And it's not only data scientists, analysts, the innovations will come through the talent. And businesses, for example, in Russia, Sberbank, for example, they built at each university their labs, and they sponsor that student, they sponsor special faculties to bring next level of talents in financial sector. And I think it should be the same for any industries, in oil and gas, and in mining, in finance, because today's modules at university, it's not up to date. We have several universities that they are keen on entrepreneurship, but I think it's not the one university's challenge. It should be in any student or talent entrepreneurship skills, and it has to be for everyone. Today, a doctor can be entrepreneur, okay? Any psychologist can be entrepreneurs. They can sell services online. One of the projects we're doing on e-commerce, we launched a special module on electronic commerce for every student, accessible for any student, because anyone can sell their services, their businesses, their goods online. So they need to have the basic level of knowledge, and that's the same, I think, for entrepreneurship. It has the capabilities and skills has to be for every student at the university.
Thank you very much indeed for that very full answer. And I'm now going to pass over to members of the education group, and then we'll capture some of the questions coming in on the Q&A section. So first of all, I'd like to pass to Fergus Robertson.
Well, what an impressive presentation. That was beautiful. Now, I say that as somebody who's been in logistics professionally for many, many years. That was beautiful. Let me just mention my background briefly. I'm the founding director of British-Kazakh Society, and I was your honorary consul in Scotland during a very interesting period when we were getting offshore organized. During the time I was honorary consul, I had the delight of having so many Kazakh students in Aberdeen. We had between 70 and 80 every year. And it was a delight when later in various ministries, being greeted by these students who were all moving into excellent but junior positions, and must have had quite an effect. But one of the things we did at that time was I was involved in the creation of the Kazakh British Technical University in Almaty. And one of the parts of it was certainly Aberdeen University, but the principal one from my point of view was Robert Gordon's University, which is my old place. And interesting to note that the biggest uptake in their diploma courses was in logistics and supply chain management. And they had a tremendous input from Kazakh students. It was delightful to see. Anyway, I really enjoyed your, I'm still recovering from it. I'd love to have a copy of it. I think BKS would love to have a copy of it. It's really excellent. Could we get you to come and solve our problems down in Dover at the moment, with all our trucks being held up for 2 and 3 days for the paperwork? We really could do with you there. also, one of the questions I was going to just present you with a thought. Lowest price is not always lowest cost. And I wonder how you deal with that in systems. We found that particularly in the offshore oil industry where I grew up in Aberdeen, where people wondered why a piece of technology, a piece of equipment, maybe costing $1,000, justified flying it in on a single part in an airplane all the way from Houston, costing maybe $45,000, $50,000 just to get it there. And the reason was, of course, that the cost of not having the part was probably about $30,000 a day of offshore operations. So these are the things that are difficult to handle just systematically or even digitally. So still the entrepreneurial, the impact of individuals who can really make it happen. So I don't want to go on too long, but I really have so many questions, but let us pass it on to the other members of this very, very interesting group that David Hardy has put together. Thank you very much.
Montu, have you any comment at this stage?
Always. First of all, wonderful to see Assel here, and having known her since she was a student here in Cambridge, and very vibrant member of our Cambridge Central Asia Forum. She has many talents, as we have seen already in technical side, but she also has artistic talent. She's performed, so a very rounded person here. We're really happy to see how you're going and how we can help support many of the things that you have outlined here from this group and beyond here in Cambridge and UK. The two things I wanted to simply say, which are kind of part of the questions and other points raised by you and others, is that how industry builds relationship with the university is a very nuanced game, right? So the industry, if it starts to dictate what it needs from universities or educational institutions, it reduces, how to say, a long-term perspective, because if people are being trained for what's needed now only, then you are shortchanging yourself in bigger future. So how do you meet that balance? And one of the success stories here in Cambridge and UK has been about that how research and training has been funded by industry, but academics are led, they're free to do what they want. It's not on demand, but what they produce becomes relevant because it's guided and shaped by understanding of industry needs are, rather than producing on demand in a sense, right? So finding that balance is very, very important for Kazakhstan currently, because you have whole host of new industries and whole universities coming through, and finding that very well thought out process is extremely important. And that applies on the other side to industry as well. And I wanted to ask a question regarding, so Kazakhstan is not the backwaters of the world as some people would like to think. It's a big industrial, how to say, country, very well industrialized in the Soviet period, but you're experiencing currently a very specific issue, how to bring the existing industry in line with modern needs, at the same time creating all these new digital things that you're talking about. So what are the processes? Are there any processes in place in policy to support the existing industry to modernize and incorporate a lot of the, not only the technologies, but thinking about the technologies, planning how to use them, how they can best benefit from that. So that kind of educational aspect in policy for the old industry to renew itself is one of my main sort of questions at the moment. So I'll leave it at that. Again, like Fergus, I have many, many more things, but it's wonderful to hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Sela. Actually, it's an interesting question, because while I was in Zerdian, currently when we developed a digital Kazakhstan program, it's not how other countries usually do. For example, they just put all the portfolio of the government projects, okay, what government is doing. Our approach is different. We put all the industrial companies, for example, ERG, Kazakhstan, okay, the biggest ones, because they are drivers of that industrial changes, and they need to put their projects in the national program, because we need to see and what kind of effect is giving. So it's very important that joint industrial companies with the government because we drive standards, we adopt policies, and it will come with joint work. And it's not like it has to be piloted first and then proved whether it works or not. And then we apply the changes, needed changes in the policies and standards. That's that kind of bridge we're building with the companies. And in terms of the talents, I think last year, the Minister of Education, they issued the Atlas of the Future specialist or future talents we need to prepare in each of the sectors. And they predicted that some of the professions will disappear because of the technologies, some will grow, and it kind of gives direction to younger generation where to go. Okay, I didn't, to be honest, when I applied to Cambridge, when because I couldn't pay for the education, and I had to go for the Bolashak scholarship, and Bolashak didn't sponsor. They give that list of specialists that they sponsor, and it was manufacturing, computer scientist. I was physician and maths previously, and I thought, I don't want to build rockets. Even I'm a physician, and I don't want to be physician. Let's just pick computer science because I don't know about it. And it's kind of application of maths and physics, but it wasn't. I always wanted to be accounting, finance, or legal, because it was a trendy professions. And now I understand how in that time, that was very important strategy, because if it wasn't there, we wouldn't be here and doing digital strategies today. So that was 10 years ahead, the right strategy in that. I was disappointed that I'm doing computer science because no one actually understood it at that time. There was emails just growing, and it was. But now I can see how important, and we shouldn't lose that time and should do right prediction 10 years time, and that's really important.
Thank you.
Sokan, you're raising your hand.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so many thanks. It's really a wonderful presentation, and you can't imagine how proud we are here to see our graduate and being so impressive. And I'm particularly happy because we are compatriots, and it's a particular pleasure for me. Assel, my question is actually two questions, but they are pretty connected with each other, and they are specified in your presentation and in one paragraph. It's about carbonization and renewables, and I'm wondering if there are any particular plans first for increasing research, R&D, research and development, because we are working over launching a project of developing research in Kazakhstan through Montu and Cavendish Lab, so on, which was suspended because of the pandemic. And I'm wondering if there are any particular plan on this, on increasing research, because Kazakhstan declared of 10 times increase within the nearest 5 years for this kind of thing. And is there any also particular plans for integrating the global energy system? As again, Kazakhstan, as far as I know, joined the global energy integration corporation plans, which was under UN umbrella. And I'm wondering where we are actually, at what stage Kazakhstan is, if you are aware of it. It's slightly beyond of the scope of your responsibilities, however.
Yes, thank you, Jokan. I think Kazakhstan has done a lot of first steps. For example, as you know, we built this center for the green energy, which is located at the Expo area. And from AFC point of view, Astana International Financial Center, recently they also launched a green energy company that will be focusing on development, bringing new technologies that will kind of in the green energy space. They are collecting investments. They will be strategically, they will be key kind of AFC body that will be working on the green energy. I will introduce with the CEO. I think you will have a good collaboration with this team, because they are actually working on, and they have good plans in this. And I think Yabur is one of the shareholders of that company, but details you will find with them.
Okay, great.
But, yeah, globally as Kazakhstan in the integration, not many from the point of citizen of Kazakhstan, we don't really see a lot of information going in this space, but we need to check, because I think Kazakhstan should kind of play a key role in this big journey, because I think as one of the producers of this energy, we should place our foot in this global kind of bigger tables and drive the global strategy in this space. But we'll check, Chokan, we'll check on it. I don't have much information.
Thanks a lot.
Miliana, I know you've got a question of the Vice Minister. Can you unmute?
Definitely. Like I'm much grateful for the excellent presentation. And as you can imagine, like wherever you talk about scaling up trade and exchange and linking it with Belt and Road Initiative, I think of the Silk Roads and I think of like you know, the connectivities along those routes. So while I believe that archaeology is not top of the list for like a long-term strategy of Kazakhstan that it would fund, I still kind of curious how much is industry or any policy, you know, makers, decision makers are willing to accept, adopt, and kind of exploit this narrative of like, you know, the entrepreneurial spirit of the nomads from like 5,000 years ago up until the modern day, because this is what they did, exactly what you're doing now, but digitally. You know, they were the ones that were scaling up the trade and exchange for the first time ever, and it happened in Kazakhstan in the Central Eurasian steppes. So there is a huge legacy to exploit in the narrative, if that's of interest. So I think it's a very side kind of a comment of mine, because obviously I cannot comment much on the financial aspects and on your expertise, but just looking as an archaeologist, this is my question.
Yes, you. I think you truly noted that our comparative advantage, probably, that being a nomad and having that right skills, trading skills in any matters, that actually helping us to talk to the right neighbors in the right way, and keeping that balance in trade without compromising internal interests. And I think luckily that's helping us when we are developing our, we say West Gate, East Gate. So East Gate is Khargos, West Gate is you know, through Atral, okay. In Russia, we are now launching our project in Akhjar port for accelerating these trades, these gates in the borders, developing this border infrastructure. The trade infrastructure is very important, because we see ourselves as a transit country. So all these sales shouldn't bypass us, and it should go through our country. And that's biggest value. And not only the physical goods, but we see us as in digital data. So one of the ideas we're proposing is why not to be a data offshore? So a lot of countries don't know where to store data. It's a data, personal data protection. Why not? We have lots of land, good weather conditions. Why not to build the data centers in Kazakhstan? So it's lowest costs, and a lot of countries, they're looking home for data centers. And we're quite open to kind of allowing biggest technology companies to kind of store their data and process their data, because that's even connecting between Asia and Europe, and the trade to Asia and back is not going to reduce. So yeah, I think nomad capabilities are helping us to accelerate in trade.
And that means you would accept archaeologists on board in developing such narratives. So this is my little window to make sure the archaeology still remains important on that list.
Yeah, you're right. And we in this field, in archaeologists, I think a lot of things has to be done, because the land is huge and it's way years and years to explore.
We're moving towards the close, but I know you've a busy schedule, Vice Minister, but we have quite a lot of questions coming in on the Q&A section, and I wonder if we might continue for maybe 10 minutes. So the first question I'd like to mention comes from Yingfeng Ji, and that follows on pretty much from what Miliana was talking about, the influence of transnational initiatives such as the Belt and Road Initiative. Where does Kazakhstan fit in with that? Is it simply reacting and responding, or is it taking a more proactive approach?
I think we're actually, as a Kazakhstan, we're quite active in Belt and Road. Especially when I was working at Astana International Financial Center, that before COVID, that activities were very, very intense. And all the ministries, like Ministry of Industrialization, they are already working on infrastructural projects. Minister of Trade as well, we're working on building these trade relations, and even if it's COVID, how we kind of continue trading between countries without closing the borders. We're working hard on that. All the ministries, I think Minister of Economics as well, they have own initiatives, but I think Kazakhstan is playing quite active role in BRI projects.
Roger Holland has asked, in response to your comments about digitalization, whether there are any projects to explore how to create new jobs in that digital world.
Yes, it's always a question. People say, oh, AI will kill the jobs. I always say, okay, let's remember when we didn't have the traffic lights. We used to have these people showing the roads, and we had the traffic lights. These people, they didn't disappear. They just relocated, they retrained, and had now different upskill job. So my belief is that technologies might reduce in some of the sectors, some of the jobs may disappear, like tax agents or customs, but we can use that people, retrain them, and that will create different sectors of job creation. That's our belief. Maybe a generic answer, but maybe if they need detailed calculations, we need to do some assessment.
Another question about digitalization comes from Jeremy Templeman, who's asking if the government may provide guidance to the many businesses who are not really aware of the capabilities that technology can bring.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think what we need to do as a government, we need to be open in, not like in a sense once a month to presentation what's going on, but it has to be a broader discussion with the business community, giving the direction that the government, the trade sector will change in considering this operational time. I think we tend to forget kind of continually talking to the business community, but it's good, actually good point and feedback for us to talk and be open about the current projects, how we can involve. And I always say, because I'm quietly involved in IT development of the sector, and when we talk about where is the IT level of the country, and when we analyzed, maybe 60% of IT companies, they run government projects. So when the government project will open, there will be IT company that will be doing that system or any platform, which means that we are direction for the growth. So if we set the right task, then the company will grow. If we set the lower level of direction, then the level of the company will be low, the quality of the technology. So we, as a government, we should play a leading role, giving the right requirements so the companies can kind of reach a benchmark. So it shouldn't be, okay, whether I buy a SAP or whether it's Kazakh made platform, it has to be competitive. So that companies level, IT companies should bring their capabilities to the, at least try, bring their level of capabilities with the international IT companies.
Thank you. And I'll ask one final question on behalf of Tina Shivacheva, who asks about how to encourage innovation and entrepreneurship. And is that something that should be bottom up or top down or a mixture of both?
Oh, that's very hardest question. Innovation. I think it's complex. It's whole ecosystem. It's universities. It's funding. It's when we discovered it always relates to the funding. It also relates to the level of the maturity of the businesses, whether they are ready to invest. So as you know, the biggest companies like oil and gas, metals and mining, by law, they need to invest 1% of their revenue for the R&D. So what we see, the trend is they're investing for the technology projects, to the innovation, how technology will change the businesses. But what we want to see, if for any company that earning, it could be middle level or largest companies, that should take that trend. 1% of their earnings need to be sent to the innovation. And the government should play. They need to prepare the talents, but the talents should stay. You know why a lot of talents are leaving the country? It's not because it's not a good home to live. It's because they're looking for interesting projects. They're looking for innovative projects. They want to be part of that big game and historical changes as are the biggest companies. So my colleagues, let's say IT professionals, they're leaving to Google, Facebook. I understand them, because that's because you're playing a part in the doing something valuable for the globe. So that's why I think one of the government what can stimulate is bring that global companies to the country. It's not like sales offices, but they can set up development offices where our students can learn, they can work, get an experience, and then they can set up their own companies with startups in IT that will drive innovation in the end. And for example, last year or year ahead, we launched Astana Hub. It's a good kind of push for development of startup ecosystem. And I launched at AFC the FinTech Hub that we annually prepare 10 startups in FinTech. There are not much companies, but we can pick quality companies and help them to kind of grow and build the interesting products for the global market. But that will take time. That will, but it's complex. It's not one government. It's a complex problem that we need to resolve.
Vice Minister, thank you very much indeed for your generous amount of time you've given us today. Every participant who's contacted us is thanking you for a wonderful talk, and our panelists share that. Your insights, your well-researched and well-informed talk, and your suggestion that there can be opportunities for even greater collaboration, including with the British-Kazakh Society Education Group, as well as our universities. We welcome those opportunities and look forward to continuing this collaboration. I said at the beginning that the first president had set out major visions which were being taken forward, and those needed young, insightful, vibrant people. With people like you, Vice Minister, we know that the future of Kazakhstan is in very safe hands. Thank you.
David, may I ask one last question?
Go ahead.
Vice Minister, I really got to say that it's so impressive. Now, I just want to ask you on behalf of BKS one question. We have several groups, and one of them is oil, gas, and renewables. I would love to have some direction from you as to who would be the key person, like your good self, on renewables. We found it difficult to identify who we should really be talking to, and I would appreciate your direction.
Yes, I'll advise one person.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, David.
I enjoyed this discussion. Thank you so much, and I'd love to be here to discuss very important questions and topics for development of our country. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assel. Hope to continue. Thank you very much.
Okay.